Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm sure you guys all know exactly who Ian is. Well, not all of you guys, but Ian is a really fascinating man. Okay, he does a lot of digging. If you want to know who runs the government, who runs the monetary system, who is in control of all of pretty much everything in the United States, well, Ian is a really great person to start with. Okay, and so here's a quick 7 minute video of him speaking on YouTube. You really don't see him on YouTube a lot because a lot of the stuff that he says will most likely get banned off of YouTube, or they won't allow because let's be honest, the people who control it don't want the truth out there. And so with that being said, I wanted to go ahead and listen to a quick 7 minute clip of him speaking about, you guessed it, who runs the government. Oh, sorry, my picture is my video is covering it, but the video is called "Who Runs the Government." Let me go ahead and minimize it so you can get an idea. There you go. And yeah, let's get it.
I love where you're going here, and I'm going to go two different directions with it. Um,
I'm a new starter on YouTube, so don't expect me to give my 100% thought on this. I gotta try to keep it in that barrier of YouTube. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to get my videos taken down so quick. I'll get a to where it doesn't reach as many people as possible.
and first, the goal of BlackRock, it's hard to say. Larry Fink is very good at his job. Extreme.
In case you don't know, Larry Fink is the owner of BlackRock, the biggest company that manages trillions of dollars.
Really good at his job, and Vanguard is notoriously good at obfuscating who's actually calling
Another company that manages our money.
the shots there. As in, they say that like the funds own it's. And so anyways, it's like, it is hard to get a concrete answer as to like, is this intentional? Mm-hmm. And the best you can do is sort of look at what they're doing across the world, like what they're doing in Ukraine to fund the and so.
And so with that being said, right? Have you ever wondered why all of a sudden we have so many gay agendas in schools, gay agendas in stores? All of a sudden, when it's Pride Month, you walk into Walmart or Target. Target was one of them that was actually, that was recently for them having all kinds of stuff there that kids shouldn't have seen. But have you ever wondered why all of a sudden this is happening? And every single time it happens, the company ends up losing millions of dollars of people not supporting it. But for some odd reason, other company just seems to pick up the idea. It's like, do you not learn from other companies? And so to give you the idea of why this is happening is because the people who owns all these mega corporations, places like Vanguard and BlackRock, they have shares in these companies. They have a saying in what these companies should put in the store and what they shouldn't put in the store. And so, with that being said, Vanguard or BlackRock or any of these multi-billion, trillion-dollar corporation will come and say, "Hey, by the way, although we're investing in your company, we want you to put this. If you don't, we will, pull out our investment." And they also have stores also have it's like a social credit score they also that they have. This is a whole different topic to get into, but you get the idea, right? These companies are also being run by these mega giant corporations. That's why they keep falling in the same line of following the same thing that we know doesn't work, but yet they still keep doing the same thing. Wait until Pride Month comes around. One company is just gonna go ahead and start selling these gay stuff again, and people are gonna be outraged about it. And then next year, boom, we just forget all about it.
Make your own judgments. But I think the more interesting part of your question is, although I might back up for a second and say, even if BlackRock doesn't have a goal, I can't imagine that the financial institutions and the members of the big club that you're not in have any problem with this voting rights thing that I just described. Like, regardless of whether it's intentional or not, the outcome benefits them all. So they're all incentivized to keep that going. But I think the really interesting part of this is sort of back to this: is there this shadowy cabal of guys sitting around a table deciding how the world runs? Or is it, what's the phrase that you
meta fraud?
Meta fraud. That's so good. I'm going to remember that. And I like to take it out of the place where we're like being contentious about it. Like, no, there's no cabal controlling the world today. It's like, whatever. I don't care. Let's rewind somewhere in history where we have a little more clarity and to unpack it as an example. And the Iraq War is a perfect example. Dick Cheney, as our vice president, as a representative of Halliburton, as an author of the clean, well, not exactly an author, but as a member of PNAC and a key architect of the Iraq War, we know full well at this point that several of the people deep in the Bush administration very much knew that the intelligence on WMDs were absolute outright lies at the time that they were being pitched to us. We knew that, or rather we know it now. At the time we were being fooled. And we know that some of those really high level people knew that they were for sure lies. But George Bush might have
Sorry to skip that. WMD is weapon of mass destruction.
just been dumb enough to get used by his buddies that were way more savvy than him. Like Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney had been around since George Bush Sr. And George Bush Sr. was a full-on CIA operative. And there's a whole other rabbit hole about him doing like these secret dark things in the Vietnam era before he became the CIA director. That is a whole other rabbit. So his daddy, HW, was good at his job. And Rumsfeld and Cheney were back in that day, and they're the old hats. And it's hard not to see them getting appointed as W's handlers. And so when you look at W, it's like maybe he knew how fraudulent they were being, but maybe he was just a useful idiot. And then you move down the chain and you think about all the journalists that parroted those lines. It's like, did they really know what they were doing, or were they just manipulable? And when you create narratives that are believable enough and that are palatable enough and that have the ability to be sold as like either the greater good or for America or for the safety of civilians or democracy, those kinds of things are things that you can rally, sorry guys, the useful idiots around. I'm just talking about Iraq War. I'm not talking about right now. But that's where you start to realize, like, I think that people often like want that simple answer of there's like 12 families that rule the world, and like maybe, but I don't really care either way, because the more you kind of like look down the line at the people that are actually engaging in the fraud in our media spaces, in our political spaces, our financial spaces, some of them know what they're doing, but not all of them. And some people are smart enough to conspire to do great things for good or for evil, like, because that's just how humans collaborate to do things. Like, if you want to start a cool podcast, you got to work with some cool people to make a podcast happen. And if you want to, make a giant financial bubble based on fraudulent housing market and then pop it and, run off with a whole bailout, you got to get with some pretty great people in order to do it. And it wouldn't hurt for that to be like the guys that run the Fed and run the banks and run the government, and then bring in a president that is willing to put all of your guys into his cabinet, which is a whole other rabbit hole. So I love unpacking that layer of like, no, I don't personally think that it is like a table of people deciding the fate of the world. I think there are tables of people that are exerting massive amounts of influence to their interests, and identifying those tables, so to speak, those metaphorical tables of powerful interests, like the Federal Reserve System, like the sort of defense contractor, international war machine system, the big pharma lobbies. Identifying those really helps you clear up the media space and the information space to understand better what's going on.
Yeah, it goes back to something you said way earlier, right? Like,
So yeah, I mean, in conclusion, the people who are ruling you, the people who are supposed to be in your interest, who are supposed to be making sure that you are living a very peaceful life to the best of your ability, yeah, they're all useful idiots. Now, I've quoted this before from Cat William, and I'll say it again. All these big dick deviants are gonna catch hell in 2024. And to be quite honest, Cat William didn't go far, but I'm gonna go far. All these politicians are gonna catch hell. Now, how are they gonna catch hell? They're gonna get exposed. And one of the primary example of them being exposed is with the whole Palestine war, and the whole world is pretty much seeing the hypocrisy of the West. If you see some of my previous video, I've shown you a picture of before and after of Gaza. And despite all these images that we see, despite all the majority of the world coming together and saying, hey, these people are committing a war crime, flat out war crime. When they go and vote at the unit at the council, The majority of the world is saying we need to stop, they need to stop bombing these people. But yet, it gets vetoed by one country, you guessed it, America. And so that's a really great example of how they're going to be exposed. And this is the start. 2025 is coming up. The war hasn't stopped. It's not going to stop because they're too far in now. And the more they continue doing it, the more the people are going to realize, like, okay, like, what is going on? And so that's, I'm just saying, man, like, it's a whole new, it is a whole new era. Technology has become more advanced. Everybody has a smartphone. Now, today, this year, not this year, I'm sorry. This century has been the first century that human beings have been able to document a genocide happening right in front of our own eyes. World War II, you can only, listen to the news and read the newspaper and they will tell you what's going on. Same thing with World War One. Fast forward today, all you gotta do is open your social media, scroll a little bit, and then boom, you've seen people just being killed. And this is all done by the useful idiots that I'm talking about.
Looking to see who is invested in which outcome, right? Which is maybe another way of saying follow the money, right?
Exactly.
It's like it just, because ultimately, I mean, not that people always do what's in their financial best interest, but generally, right? If you have to paint it in the broadest strokes, like that's a pretty reliable. I mean, not as reliable as maybe, gravity, but damn, it's pretty close, right? Like broad strokes, if you have to guess what someone's going to do, well, it's Darwinian, right? They're acting in a way that optimizes their self-preservation, right? So, yeah, it seems like a very useful way to a useful lens, let's say, to look at the world through,
Yeah.
rather than trying to, understand these stories that are fed to us. It's like you brought up the Iraq War. It's a great one. It's like, they have weapons of mass destruction. Here's 10,000 pages of reports that
Yeah.
verify that. It's like you can't even get through this information, and then the information, it's like talk about tracing it to source. It's like a lot of it's redacted, and it's like you're just, I don't know. It's a fool's errand. You'll just never get to the bottom of that.
And it's designed to be one.
And it's designed because it's a distraction, right? But if you just look like, wait, who's getting paid here, right? Like, why is this even called the Iraq War? First of all, it's like it's not even a war. We're just invading a country.
Had nothing to do with 9/11.
No, had nothing to do with that.
No. Well, they tried to make it have something to do with 9/11 by creating this anthrax scare and sending out a whole bunch of anthrax to conveniently all the people that were opposed to the Iraq War, plus some fake anthrax to the other ones to throw off the trail. And then that anthrax traced back to a CIA lab as the only place it could be produced when we actually got the facts later on. So I think that it blows my mind how many journalists on Twitter today have such a short memory to be able to kind of generally, we all agree that that is what happened during the Iraq War. And then to see what happened in Ukraine and not ask any questions, to see what's happened with Israel and Gaza and not ask very many questions, and to see what's about to happen with Iran and not ask too many questions. And it just blows my mind. Like I have yet to find a war that was not started by political scheming and fake news, essentially, dating all the way back to like kind of World War II, but kind of beyond that, even like kind of World War One. Maybe beyond that. It's real hard to do.
Yeah, I mean,
all wars are bankers' war.
So, before I go ahead and shut this down, what he said in the end is it's not necessarily because they have a short memory. It's because the people that they work for are making sure that the right information does not get out. That's all it is. If you, as a journalist, want to be able to sit down with the president and have a one-on-one interview with the president, you got to be willing to get on your knees and just kiss some ass. And you got to kiss a lot of ass to the top. And so that's what you need to understand. So journalists, it's not necessarily that they have a short-term memory. They know what they're doing. But it's just that in order for them to make the big buck, in order for them to keep their job, they have to keep the nose out of some informations. They have to make sure that they stay in line. They have to make sure that they ask softball questions such as like, oh, when you become a president, are you, I don't know, gonna legalize LBGTQ, for example? Or are you gonna stop the war? So literally, they give like softball questions like that instead of saying, "Why are we going to Ukraine? Who's funding these wars? How is this war benefiting the American people or the world? How did 9/11 have such a how did 9/11 have an impact on America?" They don't ask very strong questions because if they do, they get to either lose their job or they don't get the sweet interview with, I don't know, Taylor Swift or some shit. Anyway, the whole thing is a game. I'm gonna stop. I can't. Seriously, man. See, this is one thing I don't like about YouTube. It's the fact that you have to control what you say, or else your video won't either make it far, or you'll get your channel banned. I'll catch you guys up later.